The message appeared at 11:42 p.m., glowing softly in the dark like a secret that had waited too long to be seen. Mara reached for Daniel's phone only because the alarm kept vibrating against the wooden nightstand. She had no intention of looking at anything else. Their marriage had always been built on trust, the quiet kind that never needed checking. But before she could silence the alarm, the screen lit up, and a notification slid across it. I told you she would never find out. Tomorrow. We finalize everything. The sender's name froze her hand. Victor. Daniel's business partner, his closest friend. The man who had once helped carry boxes into their first tiny office when the company was nothing more than a dream and borrowed furniture. For a moment, Mara assumed it was about work. It had to be. Yet something in the wording felt wrong too. Careful to hidden. Her chest tightened as if her body understood before her mind did. She stared at the phone, debating whether to lock the screen and pretend nothing had happened. That would have been easier, safer, instead. Her thumb moved. The conversation opened. Messages filled the screen. Weeks of planning. Quiet discussions, legal terms she recognized instantly. Words like transfer, ownership, restructuring, and timing appeared again and again. Each sentence felt heavier than the last. Daniel and Victor weren't discussing business challenges. They were discussing how to move the company forward without her knowledge. Her company, the one she had helped build from nothing. Mara sat frozen at the edge of the bed while rain tapped against the window. Memories rose quickly, almost painfully. Clear. Long nights designing branding concepts while Daniel slept beside stacks of unpaid bills. Meetings she attended alone because Daniel struggled with presentations. The early investors she convinced when no one believed in them. She had never asked for recognition. She believed they were building a future together. Now she realized she had slowly been written out of it. Message from Daniel appeared near the bottom of the chat. She trusts me. We just need to finish this before she notices. The words didn't feel real. They felt borrowed, like lines from someone else's story. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mara locked the phone instantly and placed it back exactly where it had been. Her heart raced, but her face stayed calm as Daniel entered the room, loosening his tie and sighing with exhaustion. Long day, he said, offering a tired smile. She nodded, forcing one back. You should sleep. He climbed into bed, unaware that everything had changed in the last 60 seconds. Within minutes, his breathing slowed. He slept peacefully beside her while her world rearranged itself. Piece by piece, Mara stared at the ceiling until morning. Shock faded first. Then sadness followed. What replaced them surprised her most, not loud anger, not tears, but a cold clarity. She replayed the past few months in her mind and suddenly noticed details she had ignored. Late meetings that never made sense. Calls taken outside. Financial documents Daniel insisted on handling alone. Victor avoiding direct conversations with her. The betrayal hadn't happened overnight. It had grown quietly while she trusted blindly. Morning arrived too quickly. Sunlight slipped through the curtains as Daniel prepared for work. He kissed her forehead like always, casual and routine. Big week ahead, he said. Lots of decisions. Mara watched him carefully. She searched his expression for guilt, hesitation, anything that hinted he knew what he had done. But he looked normal, calm, almost relieved. You'll do great, she replied softly. The words felt strange leaving her mouth, but she needed time. Reacting now would only warn him. Instinct told her to wait, to understand everything before speaking. After he left the apartment felt unfamiliar. Every object carried memory, the dining table where they planned their future, the wall covered with framed awards from the company, the coffee mugs printed with their logo. She walked slowly through each room, realizing how deeply her identity was tied to both her marriage and the business. Losing one meant losing both. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Old files appeared instantly. Contracts, early drafts, partnership agreements. She began reading carefully, something she had not done in years because trust had replaced caution. Hours passed unnoticed. By afternoon, confusion turned into understanding. Her name still existed in foundational documents. She wasn't just Daniel's supportive spouse. She was legally connected to the company in ways he might have underestimated. That discovery didn't comfort her. It frightened her more. If Daniel believed she wouldn't notice, he must have convinced himself she didn't matter anymore. The realization hurt deeper than the betrayal itself. That evening, Daniel returned home cheerful, speaking about expansion, plans, and future opportunities. Mara listened quietly, studying every word. She noticed how carefully he avoided specifics. When she asked simple questions, his answers stayed vague, for the first time. She saw him not as her husband, but as someone, hiding something fragile. During dinner, he laughed at a story from work. She laughed too, matching his rhythm perfectly. Inside, however, she felt distance growing rapidly. Like watching a stranger wear a familiar face. Later that night, Daniel fell asleep quickly again. Mara remained awake, her thoughts moving faster. Now, she wasn't thinking about confrontation anymore. She was thinking about understanding the full picture. Why would he do this? Was it greed, fear, pressure from Victor? Or had he simply stopped seeing her as an equal partner? Questions filled the silence. The next morning, she visited the company office without warning. Employees greeted her warmly, unaware of the storm behind her calm smile. She walked through departments she once managed daily. Everything looked successful, polished, expanded far beyond the early days. Victor spotted her near the conference room. Surprise flickered across his face before he masked it with friendliness. "Mara, haven't seen you here in a while. Thought I'd stop." "Bye," she said casually. Head's smile held tension. "Daniel didn't mention you were coming. I wanted it to be a surprise." For a brief moment, neither spoke. The air felt heavy with unspoken knowledge. Mara studied him carefully. Victor avoided eye contact more than usual, checking his watch, shifting his posture. Guilt lived in small movements. She left soon after, confirming what she already suspected. Something major was being prepared, and she was intentionally excluded. Driving home, anger finally surfaced, but it was controlled, focused. She realized revenge born from emotion would only weaken her. She needed patience. That evening, she opened a notebook and began writing everything she remembered. Conversations, dates, changes in behavior. Not out of obsession, but clarity. Each detail helped her see the pattern. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It was strategic. Days passed. Mara continued acting normally. She cooked dinner, discussed weekend plans, and listened to Daniel talk about business success he claimed they both shared. The more he spoke, the clearer it became that he believed his actions were justified. He didn't act like a villain. He acted like someone convinced he was making a necessary decision. That realization confused her feelings. Part of her wanted to hate him completely. Another part remembered the man who once stayed awake all night helping her prepare for an important presentation. The man who believed in her when no one else did. People didn't change overnight. They convinced themselves slowly. One evening, Daniel mentioned an upcoming celebration dinner for investors. "It's important," he said. "You should come." Mara met his eyes calmly. Well. He smiled, relieved, unaware that she already knew why the dinner mattered. After he left the room, Mara sat alone in the quiet apartment. She felt the weight of choice pressing against her thoughts. She could confront him now, demand explanations, end everything immediately. Or she could wait, learn more, and decide carefully what justice meant for her. Outside, rain began falling again, just like the night she discovered the message. She realized something then. The betrayal had already changed her, not by breaking her, but by awakening a strength she had forgotten she possessed. Trust had once guided her decisions. Now awareness did. She wasn't planning revenge yet. She was preparing to understand the truth completely. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the hurt and confusion, a quiet determination formed. If Daniel and Victor believed she would remain silent, they had misunderstood her entirely. The story of their success had always included her. What happened next would too. Mara learned quickly that revenge did not begin with action. It began with control. The morning after her visit to the office, she woke before Daniel and watched the quiet rise of his breathing, wondering how someone could sleep so peacefully while hiding so much. The anger she expected to feel never exploded. Instead, it settled into focus. She understood that reacting emotionally would only give him time to protect himself. Silence became her strongest weapon. When Daniel left for work, she opened her laptop and started rebuilding the past, piece by piece. Like an investigator studying a mystery she never wanted to solve, she reviewed contracts again, slower this time. Every clause mattered, every signature told a story. She realized Daniel and Victor believed she had stepped away from operations long enough to lose legal influence. But the early agreement still carried her name as a founding shareholder. That detail changed everything. They were not simply excluding her emotionally. They were risking legal consequences without realizing it. The discovery gave her confidence, but it also hurt. Daniel knew her intelligence. He knew how deeply she understood the business. For him to assume she would never notice meant he had already decided she no longer mattered. Days passed in careful routine. Mara cooked dinner, asked simple questions, and listened closely to Daniel's answers. Each conversation revealed more gaps. He spoke about expansion but avoided numbers. He mentioned meetings but never specifics. Sometimes guilt flashed across his face for a second before disappearing behind casual smiles. She noticed how often he checked his phone, how quickly he turned the screen away. The man she once trusted without question now felt like someone rehearsing a role at night. Doubt visited her. She remembered the early years when they struggled together, sharing cheap meals and impossible dreams. Daniel had not always been this version of himself. That memory made her hesitate. Was revenge truly what she wanted, or was she searching for fairness? The question followed her everywhere. She realized she wasn't trying to destroy him. She wanted acknowledgement proof that her sacrifices had value. One afternoon, she met quietly with a lawyer recommended by an old colleague. The office smelled of paper and coffee, and the calm professionalism of the room steadied her nerves. She explained everything carefully, avoiding emotional language. She presented documents, timelines, and messages she had memorized. The lawyer listened without interruption, then leaned forward with interest. They tried to restructure ownership without informing you. He asked. Mara nodded. That may not hold legally, he replied. If you are still listed as a founding stakeholder, your consent is required. The words felt like air returning to her lungs. She hadn't realized how deeply fear had settled inside her until that moment. Still, victory didn't feel satisfying. Instead, she felt sadness growing stronger. Daniel had risked everything they built together for secrecy. Walking home afterward, she thought about confrontation. She imagined placing the evidence in front of him, demanding explanations. But every version of that conversation ended in chaos. He would deny, defend, or justify. None of those outcomes would give her clarity. She decided patience would hurt less than regret. Meanwhile, Daniel convinced himself he was doing the right thing. Pressure from investors had increased. Victor repeatedly argued that Mara's absence from daily operations made restructuring necessary. Daniel told himself he was protecting the company's future. He avoided thinking about betrayal by framing it as responsibility. Each lie became easier once he believed it served a larger purpose. Mara noticed his growing confidence. He seemed lighter, almost relieved, as if a difficult decision had already been made. That change confirmed her suspicion. The final step of their plan was near. She began preparing quietly. She organized files, copied documents, and wrote down every detail she might need later. Her actions were calm, precise, and emotionless. Planning gave her stability when memories threatened to weaken her resolve. One evening, Neil mentioned an upcoming celebration dinner again, describing it as an important milestone for the company. His excitement sounded genuine. For a moment, she wondered if he hoped she would simply accept whatever announcement came. Perhaps he believed she would remain supportive no matter what. She smiled gently. "I'll be there," she said. After he left the room, she sat alone in silence, feeling the weight of what was coming. Revenge no longer felt like anger. It felt like preparation for truth. She wasn't planning humiliation. She wanted accountability. Still, the line between justice and revenge blurred more each day. Sleep became difficult. Her thoughts replayed conversations, searching for the exact moment. Trust began to break. She realized betrayal rarely arrives loudly. It grows quietly through small choices people justify to themselves. That understanding softened her anger but strengthened her determination as the dinner approached. Tension followed her everywhere. Ordinary moments felt temporary, like scenes before a storm. She watched Daniel laugh at television shows and wondered if he would ever understand the cost of what he had done. She questioned whether exposing the truth would bring peace or only deepen the damage between them. The night before the event, Mara stood by the window watching city lights flicker below. She recognized the change within herself. Fully, the woman who once avoided conflict now prepared to face it directly. Not for revenge alone, but for self-respect. She understood that remaining silent would mean agreeing with the version of her life Daniel had chosen without her consent, for the first time since discovering the message. She felt calm. The plan was not about hurting him. It was about refusing to disappear. And as she turned away from the window, she knew the next day would decide more than the future of a company. It would decide who she became after betrayal someone, defined by anger or someone strong enough to demand truth without losing herself. The night of the celebration arrived faster than Mara expected. The city lights reflected against the restaurant's tall glass windows, turning the place into a stage built for success stories. Investors laughed loudly, waiters moved between. Tables with practiced ease and soft music filled the air. Everything looked perfect, polished and confident, the exact image Daniel and Victor wanted the world to see. Mara walked beside Daniel as they entered, her calm expression hiding the storm of thoughts inside her. He smiled proudly, placing a gentle hand on her back as if nothing between them had changed. To everyone watching, they looked like partners celebrating a shared victory. Mara noticed how Daniel relaxed the moment guests greeted him. Praise surrounded him, and he absorbed it easily. Victor joined them quickly, his confidence sharp, his voice loud enough to command attention. He welcomed investors, joked about long nights of hard work, and spoke about the company's bright future. Neither man mentioned Mara's role beyond polite introductions. She observed quietly, understanding now that exclusion had already become part of their narrative. As the evening progressed, tension built inside her, not as fear but anticipation. She listened carefully to conversations around her. Investors spoke about expansion, new leadership, and upcoming changes. The words confirmed what she already knew: the announcement tonight would finalize her removal. Daniel believed she would hear it along with everyone else and accept it silently. Dinner ended, and Victor stood near the center of the room, raising his glass. Conversations faded as attention shifted toward him. He began a speech about ambition, risk, and difficult decisions required for growth. His tone carried pride, but beneath it, Mara sensed urgency. He wanted the announcement finished quickly before questions appeared. Daniel joined him, smiling as applause followed. He thanked supporters, praised teamwork, and described the company's Journey from a small idea to a thriving success. Mara listened carefully, waiting for a single acknowledgement of her contribution. It never came. The absence hit harder than betrayal itself. Years of sacrifice erased in one speech. For a brief second, anger surged through her, urging her to interrupt immediately, to expose everything with sharp words. But she remembered why she waited this long. This moment was not about anger. It was about truth. Victor announced the restructuring plan, explaining that new ownership changes would allow faster growth and stronger leadership moving forward. Investors nodded, some clapping already, unaware of the hidden conflict beneath the polished words. Mara stood. The movement was small, but it stopped the room's energy instantly. Daniel's smile faded as confusion crossed his face. He had not expected her to speak. "Before this continues," she said calmly, her voice steady, "there's something important everyone should understand." The room grew quiet. No shouting. No accusations, just silence waiting for explanation. She placed a folder on the table beside Victor. Inside were documents organized carefully, original contracts, ownership agreements, and proof that restructuring required her consent. Her lawyer stepped forward quietly, confirming her position without drama. Confusion spread among the investors. Murmurs replaced applause. Victor's confidence faltered as he flipped through the pages, realizing the mistake. Daniel stared at Mara, shock and regret fighting across his face. "You knew?" he asked softly. "I learned," she replied. She did not insult him. She did not reveal personal messages or private betrayals. She simply explained the facts. Her calmness carried more weight than anger ever could. Investors asked questions. Legal details were clarified. Slowly, the narrative shifted from celebration to accountability. Daniel understood then that his plan had failed not because she sought revenge, but because she refused to disappear quietly, tried to speak, searching for justification. But words came slowly. For the first time, he saw the distance his decisions had created. Victor attempted to defend the restructuring as a necessary business move, but the room no longer supported certainty. Trust mattered to investors, and secrecy threatened stability. Mara looked at Daniel one last time before speaking again. "I'm not here to destroy the company," she said. "I'm here because I helped build it, and I deserved honesty." Words carried disappointment more than anger, and that difference changed everything. The conflict stopped feeling like revenge and became something deeper. Demand for respect. After discussions and legal clarification, the announcement ended without celebration. The restructuring was paused. Decisions would need revision. Investors requested transparency before moving forward. The evening ended quietly. Guests left in thoughtful silence rather than applause. Outside the restaurant, cool night air replaced the heavy atmosphere inside. Daniel approached Mara slowly, his confidence gone. "I thought I was protecting the business," he said. "Didn't think you'd understand the risks." Mara studied him carefully. She realized he believed his own reasoning. In his mind, he had not betrayed her. He had solved a problem. That realization hurt more than anger ever could. "You stopped seeing me as your partner," she replied gently. That was the real mistake. He had no answer. She walked away without shouting, without victory gestures, without revenge fulfilled, in the way she once imagined. Instead, she felt something unexpected: relief. The truth was finally visible, no longer hidden behind smiles and silence. Weeks later, Mara finalized her exit from the partnership under fair terms. She reclaimed her share and chose a different path, leaving the company behind. Daniel remained, forced to rebuild trust both professionally and personally, standing alone in her new office one morning. Sunlight filling the empty space, Mara reflected on everything that had happened. Revenge had not brought joy or satisfaction. It had brought clarity. She realized revenge only felt powerful when driven by anger, But justice felt quieter, steadier. She had not destroyed Daniel or Victor. She had simply refused to let betrayal define her worth. And as she looked forward, instead of backward, she understood the true lesson. Revenge may promise closure, but self-respect is what finally sets a person free.